Okay, welcome everyone, and good evening. As we are sponsored by A.B. Spry for Nachas from his entire family, and by Michal Avram, that everybody should finish Shas with great understanding and good health. As we welcome in Saba, we welcome in Nachman Chapler, and Mel Zachter, and Mark Frankel, Dr. Udell, Irving Fishbaum, Aaron Swade, Baruch Ian, Barish Gesserman, Dr. Guy, Menachem Yamansky, Michal Akta, Shimon Klein, and Yitzi Fuchs, Shelley Zeitlin, Naftali Javelin, Pesach Siegelman, Abe Arbach, Ilya Shutman, Yitzi Muller, Rabbi Kranz, David Helfgott, on Kol HaLashon. And we are holding on two lines from the bottom of Daf Bava Metzia, learning the fascinating parak of Elu Metzias, Halakech Peris Mechaveiroi. If I buy fruit from Baruch and I find loose money in it, I could keep it. If the money, however, has a siman, so then I got to announce it. So the Gemara asks, why do I keep it? I got it from Baruch. Why? If he sells me Paris and I find in the basket money, why don't I return it to Baruch? So now the Gemara clarifies this. Amrei shlokish mishum Reb Yanai lo yishanu ela b'lekeach min hatagar. This is only when I buy it from a middleman, and the middleman got fruit from all kinds of suppliers. So the money could have came from any one of the suppliers. But if I buy it privately from Baruch, then I have to return it to Baruch. That's obvious. It's only when I buy it from a middleman. Amalei Rav Nachman. So Rav Nachman says, and Baruch doesn't have a bunch of threshers that thresh it. Maybe it fell from one of his threshers. Amalei Rav Nachman v'chi balabayis ba'atzmai dashen. Does he himself thresh it? He doesn't thresh it. Amalei, so he said, Ismaye, should I erase the teaching? No. Amalei loy tetagam masnisin kegan shidashen al yidei avdei v'shifpasei hakananim. Baruch has an inside operation. His own servants thresh it. So that's all Baruch's property, so then I would have to return it to Baruch. So now we're getting ready to start a new Mishnah, and the Mishnah is going to address, and much of the Gemara now is going to address seemingly superfluous words in the pasuk about Hashavas Aveda. Because the pasuk about Hashavas Aveda says, it says, L'chol Aveda Sachicha, but after it's, actually before, it says, L'chol Aveda Sachicha, anything that your brother lost, the pasuk says you should do it for his donkey, you should do it for his clothing, his simla, you should do it for his shar, you should do it for his seh. So the pasuk says, different pasuk, right? But the pasuk says, all of these materials, all of these things, if it already says the all-inclusive, l'chol avedis achicha, why does it have to, single out the simla, the clothing, the shar, the seh, the chamar? So, as we welcome in Mo Kushner, that's coming in by us, and Stephen Holtzman, I think, just joined us. Okay, now people are beginning to show up over here. I mean, it was getting very slow tonight. Says the Mishnah, if it says why does it have to say clothing? It says all what your brother loses. Why is it singled out? To compare to it, that it has distinctive features. Usually people's clothing have distinctive features. V'yesh la toivin, and it has a claimant. This is the source for if the person was miyayish, gave up hope, like we said, if you heard somebody say, "Ay, Viley, whoa, I lost my good pen," you don't have to return it. If it has a distinctive feature, and it has a claimant, you have to announce. Says the Gemara, what does it mean? Clarify. The Mishnah doesn't say. What does it mean that simla is already included? Amarava, bichlal, that which is in the says in the pasuk, bichlal kol avedas achicha, all what your brother lost. So now the Gemara asks, but it also says in the pasuk sharon chamar, because there's a pasuk that says leisira es sharachicha oiseya. You shouldn't see your brother's ox or sheep and hide your eyes from it. Rather, hashev teshiveim loy. Right. So Amarava lameli dekasrach manashar chamar seva simla. So now we want to know all these things. Shar, chamar, seh, simla. It's all included in kol avedas achicha. So what do we learn out from all these extra words? Sriche. Dekasrach simla. If it only said simla, havamina hani mili be'edim degufa. That's only if there's witnesses that it's Stephen's item, or v'simanim degufa, or there's witnesses on Stephen's clothing. Right? He has his name on the pocket. Aval chamor be'edim de'ukif. But if Mark finds a donkey and there's witnesses that it's Stephen's saddle, maybe he doesn't have to return the donkey. V'simanim de'ukif, or the simanim on the saddle, maybe you don't have to return the donkey. So kasrachmana chamar, da'afilu chamar b'simani ha'ukif. You have to return the donkey, even though Stephen only gives simanim for the saddle. Shar v'seh the kasrachmana lamali. Why does it have to say shar and seh? So here the Gemara tells us a very interesting thing. Shar da'afilu legizas znavoi. Now Rashi learns this means that if Mark found the ox and Mark sheared the tail of the ox. Now, I don't know if you know about it, but the market for the shearings of the tail of an ox isn't a big market. Not a big market. Right? It's not worth a pruta. So Mark might think he doesn't have to return it. But since he has to return the ox, he has to return it with everything, even the shearings that are less than a pruta. That's a chiddush. I might think he returns the ox, but that which he sheared he could keep because it's less than a pruta. V'seh legizaisav. And a sheep he has to return with its wool. So the Gemara says, well, if you have to return even the shearings of the tail, you surely have to return the wool of the sheep. Surely you would have to return the wool that he shears from it. Ela Amarava Chamar, the pasuk of the word Chamar, debar. Remember, it says V'nafel shama shar or Chamar. Now, the Rabbanan learn shar v'loy adam, chamar v'loy kelim. That if utensils fall in a bar, you're potter. But Rabbi Yehuda holds that you're chayiv for kelim b'bar. So then why does it say chamar? So Amar Rava chamar debar Rabbi Yehuda. The word chamar by bar according to Rabbi Yehuda, v'sed da'aveda, and the word seh, the extra word seh by aveda l'divrei hakol kasha. It's one of the big mysteries, one of the big mysteries of the Torah. Says the Gemara, maybe the seh comes to tell us that Mark, if the animal, while Mark found the sheep, if it relieved itself, that Mark has to return the feces. because the feces is good for manure. The Ve'ema l'glalim hu da'asa, says the Gemara, no. Stephen says, I moichel the feces. Mark doesn't have to make a feces bag collection. Says the Gemara, glalim ifkurei mifkalu. Says the Gemara, v'dilma l'simonim hu da'asa. Maybe it's coming to tell you that a garden variety simon is doraisa. Because this we said, remember we said, this is a question, as we welcome in Itchy joining us, making a post-Purim appearance. Is it Itchy? Yeah, he's wearing his costume. Good to have you, Itchy. Says the Gemara, I didn't welcome in everybody over here. We welcome in Reuven Shamet, Michal Avram, Reb Kramer, Reb Avram, and Gedalia. Gedalia is true to his word. I said, are you going to be able to come before the wedding? And Gedalia said, yes. So good for you. Good for you. If I thought it was swingable, I would do the daf by the chasana. But I don't know how swingable it is.
It's going to be probably
hard. Yeah. What? I don't know. He's nervous. He says, I don't need a rabbi saying a daf by my wedding. What?
Get a room on the side.
Yeah, but I have to get a room on the side that has very good internet, so I could do the Zoom. So some Bali Simcha, they set up the whole thing, but I didn't want to bother you. I didn't want to.
The chassan room, I don't think they're doing anything with it after.
Yeah, but I have to know that there's good internet. If you want to find out, I could still try to swing it. Because we're going to have people at the chasana from the shir, right?
Yeah.
Right. So even Mark, I think, is coming. Mark, you're coming to the chasana, right? Right. Well, there's still time. If you could find out before tomorrow night, if there's a room that I could do it, then we'll make copies, and I'll do I don't mind doing it from the chassan. I pack up my equipment 1, 2, 3. Anyway, the rabbi said what we're talking about is our chaver Adaf Gedalia Engel. His lovely daughter Brindy is getting married Thursday night. So the shir Thursday night will be at 9 o'clock. Shir Thursday night at 9 o'clock because of the wedding. So either I'm going to do it back here in shul, or I'll do it from the wedding, depending on what Gedalia sets up. What kind of mood Gedalia is in. Yes, it's a very big simcha. It's is Brindy the first kala of the Agudas Yisrael Be'ezev of Fairways? Yeah, she is. It's a big simcha. First kala.
They haven't been doing people get chassan her kala. Pearl might have been the first one. Rami Pearl.
Yeah, but he really wasn't a member. He really wasn't a member. You're talking about Hach you're talking about.
Hach's her son.
Oh, her son. I thought you meant Eli Hach himself.
No, to be Hach's son.
Yeah, but they weren't members here, right?
No.
They weren't members. Okay. So says the Gemara, I'm sorry I interrupted the shir for chit-chat. Says the Gemara, but maybe the word seh is coming to tell you that a simple simon has biblical power. And of course the dafkamina is, if it has biblical power, then you could return a get that has a simon, which a get is a device that needs to be of biblical strength. V'dilma l'simonim hudasa di bailan, because if you remember, we had an inquiry: simonim d'oraisa d'rabanan, are simonim biblical or only rabbinical? Because Rachmana said, Afilu b'simonim, even with a regular garden variety simon, ma'adrinon. Says the Gemara, one second, there's a different gears over here. Hold on a second. Da amrinon, da afilu b'samanim mahadrinon, and that we should be saying v'simonim doraisa. So the Gemara says that can't be, because since we learn out simonim from simla, so it can't be that we learn it out from seh. Imre midikatani lutana lissimonim gabe simla. Dikatani ma simla muyechedesh yesh ba simonim yesh la toivin chayv lahachriz. You have to announce it. Af kol davish yesh ba simonim yesh la toivin, and has a claim in chayv lahachriz. Shmami na the seh lavla simonim hudasa. Seh doesn't come for simonim, and therefore seh remains one of Shas's mysteries. Very few words in the Torah are a mystery. Chamor of Bor, according to Rabbi Yehuda, and Seh of Aveda remain a mystery. Tan Rabbanan, it says, Asher Toivad, that which you lose, Prat la Aveda she'ein bo shava pruta. That excludes something that's not worth a pruta, because if it's not worth a pruta, that's not considered a loss by you. Rabbi Yehuda Imer Mitzasa, you find it, Prat la Aveda she'ein bo shava pruta, because if it's not worth a shava pruta, that's not really called a find. You know, you find a half a pickle. Look what I found. That's not a find. And if you lose a half a pickle, you don't say, look what I lost. So the Gemara says, my benai, what's the difference if you learn it out from Asher Toivad or if you learn it out from a Mitzasa? Amar Abaye, so Abaye says, no difference. Mashma is Toishanika benai. The only thing is where you learn it from. In other words, it's a question from which drasha. Ma nafkalei Asher Toivad and ma nafkalei Mitzasa. Says the Gemara, it's like I had a Rebbe, Rabbi Green, Olav Shalom. I asked him once in Shia, what's the nafkamina? So I remember he said to me, dreidel head. He cleared a shaila. So he cleared a shaila, so I asked him, what's the nafkamina? So he said, dreidel head. Nafkamina l'kedushin. So I said to him, what do you mean, nafkamina l'kedushin? So he said, well, if you're mekadesh on the condition that you know pshat, so it's an afkamina whether the kedushin is good or not. Okay, but anyway, says the Gemara, one learns out only if it is a shava pruta from the words asher toivet, or ma nafkalei mitzasa. But here comes the question: what does each one do with the other pasuk? What does he do with the word of mitzasa? It says that you only have to return the lost article of your brother, not the lost article of a guy. Now, I might think that just means that if it's the lost article of a guy, you don't have to go after it to pick it up and deal with it. But once you pick it up, you have to return it to a guy. So therefore, he says, umitzasa. Umitzasa means that you already picked it up. The asli liyadei mashman, it still says, ulechol avedas achicha. Only if it's a yid, but not a guy. Umalaman denafkelei mimamatzasa hay asher toivid my oven. What does he learn from Asher Toivad? This is where we learn out that if something is taken away by a flash flood, even if it has a siman, you don't have to return it. Why? That if it's swept away by the river, she muteres, you could keep it, even if it has a siman. Shenemar kain ta'asa lekolach avedas achicha asher toivad mimenu. So you should do for all lost articles that are only lost from him, but it's available to the rest of the world. Asher toivad mimenu mitzasa misha avuda heimenu. Only if it's lost from him, but if it's taken away by a flash flood, so it's lost to the whole world, the one that uses a mitzasa to tell me that an aveda that's not a shava pruta, you don't have to return. How does he know that even if you found it and it's in your hand, you don't have to return it to a guy? Umatzasa. It says an extra vav. The Ida Chad Rabbi Yochanan, the din of Rabbi Yochanan, the one who learns out from Asher Toivad, that it's only if it's a Shava Pruta. How does he know the din of Rabbi Yochanan that if it's taken by a flash flood, you don't have to return it? Minale. Nafkale Mimenu. It's from the word Mimenu, only if it's lost to him, but not to the rest of the world. He doesn't feel that you dash in the word mimenu without the words asher toivad. It goes together, asher toivad mimenu. Rava says, no, it's not mashmaz darshan ikebenar. There's a nafkamina la'alacha, whether you learn out to exclude less than a shava pruta from asher toivad, or whether you learn it out from umatasa. Rava Amapruta Shahuzla Ikibina. The difference is if Michal Avram finds a stamp and then it becomes worth less than a Shavapruta. So does he have to return it? Mandiyama Me'asha Toivad Ika. Because when it was lost, it was worth than less than Shavapruta. Mandiyama Mitzasa, by the time he found it, it wasn't worth a Shavapruta anymore. So then then he doesn't have a chiyuv to return it. Says the Gemara, Ulamandiyam Asher Toivad, according to the Mandiyam that says Asher Toivad, when it was lost, but it also has to be worth a Shavapruta when it was found. Because the Pasuk also says a Mitzasa, Veleka, and here it wasn't worth a Shavapruta when it was found. Ela pruta shehukra ikbeinai. When it was lost, it wasn't worth a shava pruta. But when he found it, it's worth a shava pruta. Mandama mitzasa ika, because when he found it was worth a shava pruta. Mandama asher toivad, when it was lost, leka, says Gemara, but here too. Olamandiyama mitzasa, haba inon asher toivad, it has to be worth a shava pruta when it was lost, beleka. Ella, here's the case. Pruta shehokra v'hozla v'chaza v'hokra. Initially, the stamp was worth a pruta when it was lost. Then, in the interim, before Michal Avram picked it up, it went to less than a shav pruta. And then, when he picked it up, it went back to a shav pruta. That's ikebinayim. Manda Amar Asher Toivad, the one that says that the Iker is Asher Toivad when it was lost. It was worth a pruta when it was lost, and it was worth a pruta when it was found. So Michal Avram has to return it. Manda Amar Mitzasa, and here we put the emphasis on the Vav. The Vav says it has to be Umatzasa connected to Asher Toivad, that from the time it was lost until the time it was found, it was worth a shava pruta. Here, since in the interim it went to less than a pruta, Michal Avram doesn't have to return it. But it has to be a share of a pruta from when it was lost till when it was found. Here it's not, because in the interim it plunged. and therefore Michal Avram doesn't have to return it. So now let's get back to this question of whether Simonim or Dorais or Draban. Now I want to, before we learn this sugya, we have to understand that a Simon Muvik, that means a very distinctive Simon, is definitely good. So you'll return a get if, let's say, Ruvain was delivering a get, he was a shliach, he dropped it. He says, I know that there was a cigar burn next to the letter Gimel. That's definitely a good simon. That's called a simon move. If he says there was a hole in the get, that's a regular simon. The question whether simonim dorais or not is a regular simon. So ibayalu, simonim dorais or drabanan? Are simonim biblical or not? Says the Gemara as we turn the page, my nafkamina, oh, la dura get isha b'simonim. To return the get to the shliach, who will then give it to the wife to divorce herself from a husband, which is a question of issa doraisa, Yomrit doraisa, if it's biblical, madrina. The Yomrit Rabbanan, if we say it's Rabbanan, the Rabbanan did it by monetary matters. Kiyav Rabbanan takanta b'mamayna, by fiscal matters. I will be surah loyav Rabbanan takanta. They didn't do it by an issa dorais. So the Gemara says, Tashma, afa simla hoisa bichlal. It says that clothing was included in the chol avedas achicha. Why does it say simla? To compare to it, just like clothing usually has simonim and it has claimants, so chayv lahachris. Af kol davar sheyesh lo simonim v'yesh lo tovim chayv lahachris. Says the Gemara, Tana, the Tana really learns out from Simla, Toivim Itzrichalei, that clothing belongs to a person. So also you only have to return an Aveda if it belongs to the person and he wasn't Miyayish yet. Simonim are really only the Rabbana. And Kedi Nasva, and it was just mentioned along the way. This is what's called an asmachta. A lot of times, when as Rashi says, "B'loy mikra el asmechinu akra ba'alma." In other words, a lot of times when the Rabbanan enacted something in order that people should take it seriously, they connected it to a pasuk. Tashma chamor b'simonei ukef. We said that. Why does it say chamor? That we return a chamar with the simonim on the saddle. So you see simonim adoraisa. Ema be'edei ukuf. It says with simonim or witnesses. If there are witnesses that it's Stephen's saddle, then we return the donkey too. And the only reason it says simonim again is bichti nasva. Tashma v'hoye imach. It should be with you ad roish achicha oisai, until your brother seeks it out. So says the Gemara, what do you mean? V'chitala al datcha sheyitno loy, that you should give it to him kaidim sheyidrashenu. It says it's, and the lost article should be with you until your brother seeks it out. So the Gemara says, do you think you should return it before he seeks it out? How are you going to know to return it? It means that you should check it out to see if he's a trickster or not. So how are you going to check it out? My lab is simonim. Doesn't that mean that you take a simon from him? Loi beidim. You ask him to bring proof that it's his. Bring people. Tashma ein ma'idin, when they want to allow a woman to remarry, and they want to testify about the identity of the corpse, ein me'idim ela al pirtzaf upon him, only if they could recognize the face imachaitim, with the nose. Before dental records and before DNA, you can't identify a face without the nose. The nose is the distinctive feature of the face. And it's not enough, even if you have signs on the body and on his clothing. So you see that simanim are not deraisa. Shmami no, simanim will have deraisa. Says, here it's talking about very weak simanim. Imre gufay da'arich v'gutz. Oh yeah, he was tall. Well, he was short. Yeah, there's just about 1 million people that are tall and 1 million people that are short. Caleb, even if you identified that he was wearing a red blazer, maybe he loaned out his red blazer to somebody else. Says the Gemara, well, wait a second. Remember we said we returned Stephen's donkey because he identified his saddle. But why? Maybe Stephen loaned his saddle to somebody else. How do we return the donkey with the identification of the saddle? Says, no, people don't lend out their saddles. Saddles have to be a perfect fit for the animal. If it's worn by a different animal, it chafes the animal terribly. People don't lend out the saddles because it irritates the donkey. When it says you can't identify the body with the clothing, it's talking about, again, a very weak identification. He's wearing a white shirt. He's wearing a black jacket. Yeah, thanks. That's a really, really good identification. Says the Gemara, Elohad Tanya, Motza kosher bekis, oy ba'arneke ubetabas. If you found the get tied to the person's purse, or to his wallet, or to his signet ring, oy shematzu ben kelev, or it was found amongst his papers, afilu lizman meruba, even after a long time, kosher. You could return the get. So, well, why don't we say that maybe he lent out his wallet, maybe he lent out his ring. Maybe he lent it out to somebody else. Says the Gemara, no. People don't lend out purses, wallets, and their signet ring. Their purse and their wallet, they were very suspicious. They're very superstitious. They were afraid if they would lend out their wallet, maybe they'll lose their luck. So, they were afraid, Rashi says, that if you give somebody your wallet, maybe you're giving him your mazel. So people were afraid to do that. The tabas, and people didn't give their signet ring simply mishum de mezoyev, because they're afraid that people will forge with it. So let's say that this question of simonim doraisa is actually a machlokes tanoim. By the way, I just want to point out, Rabbi Isai, that as we're learning this Gemara and we're sitting back, we should remember that it wasn't too long ago that we were learning this sugya of shtarais, and at every turn we had to really stretch ourselves to figure out what the case is and what the new idea of the Gemara is. If you remember, every line. This is the way Shas works. When we say heroes of the Daf, heroes of the Daf means that people come even though it's Purim night. Heroes of the Daf mean that people come even if it's Bedika night or even if it's Matzah Yom Kippur. And heroes of the Daf also mean that people come even when the going gets rough. Says the Gemara, Lema Kitanoi. Let's say that this question, whether Simonim are Doraisa or Dorabanan, is Machlokes Tanoi. Ein me'idin ala shuma. We cannot testify that this is her dead husband, that she should remarry, lo yaleinu, by identifying a wart or a mole. The laws ben ma'avoyam are me'idin ala shuma. That we could give identification with a mole on the neck. Says the Gemara, my lab, let's say they're arguing the Tanakama Sav is Simonim Durabanan, and therefore it's not enough to allow a woman to remarry. The laws have been my voice every Simon Doraisa. So Rava says no. I'm Rava the Kuli Alma Simonim Doraisa. The Emerson is Simonim are biblical. But a mole, this is very interesting. There's an opinion that holds that if a person is born in the same hour of the same day of the same year, they're born under similar planetary influences, and they both could have the same mole. Here, the question is it likely that because they were born, as Rashi says, they were born under the same planetary influence, maybe they both have a mole. So it's not an exclusive simon. There's no such a thing that people will have the same mole in the same place because they're born on the same hour. There's no such thing. But here the question is whether the rigor mortis, whether the transformation of death, whether the shock of death could make bodily changes. And therefore, the existence of something after death is not conclusive. A mole is not changing because of death. The simanim are the rabbanon. Oh, so then what's the machlokes? Remember I told you that a very distinctive simon is enough for sure. Like a cigar hole on the side of the letter Gimel. Here the question is a mole 2 inches next to the left ear, is that a simon muvik or not? Ma'asav shuma simon muviku, or ma'asav shuma lav simon muviku. Amar Rava, im timtzaloimer simonim lav doraisa. If simonim are not biblical, heichi madrina navedasa b'simonim. How could I return? I find a lost article, and Shelley says to me that I have a scratch in the middle of my Parker pen. How could I return it to him when maybe it's not his and I'm stealing from the original owner? Really, it's Reuven's Parker pen. Reuven was born. He's a baby boomer. He knows what a Parker pen is. Right? Maybe it's Reuven's Parker pen. Says the Gemara. So heichi madrina navedasa b'simanim. Says the Gemara, I'm pleased to return the Parker pen, the neder b'simanim, that when I lose a pen, nami nadru b'simanim. So the Gemara says, that's nice. Over Reuven's pen, I'm pleased. Amalei Rav Safar Rav of Chiyad Ma'aseh Tov La'atzma. Do I do things good for myself? But Mom and Shein and Shalai with money that's not mine? No, so the Gemara says no. Ruvain is pleased that it should be returned with a siman, so that sometimes when he loses something, he'll get it back with a siman. That people should give simanim and recover it. Made the idea, he knows the Adam Leslie, he has no witnesses. Nobody knows, this doesn't mean real simanim. Nobody knows distinctive features. I'll give distinctive features, and I'll get it. So, in other words, most of the time, even though simanim are not the Raisa, Ruvain says it's okay if you return it with a casual siman, because most of the time I'm the only one that's going to know about the casual siman. Says the Gemara, Elahadit Nan, Reb Shimon Gamliel Eimer Echad Halayva Mishleisha. If we find 3 documents, and all 3 documents say that Aaron owes money to, one says he owes money to Baruch, one says he owes money to Barish, and one says he owes money to Dr. Guy, we return it to Baruch, Yazul Alayva, because it's likely that it fell from Baruch, because all 3 are that he took a loan. Shloisha shalavim min echad. If 3 people borrowed from Baruch, that means Dr. Guy, Shelley, and Barish borrowed from Baruch. So then we return it to the Malva. We return it to the creditor. We return it to Baruch. Yazal Milva. Says the Gemara, are you going to say over here that Nichalei L'Loiva L'Adurei L'Milva? That Barish and Dr. Guy and Irving are pleased that it should be returned to the creditor? They're never going to be pleased to have it returned to the creditor. Says the Gemara, no. Over there it's a simple svara. Amalei Hasam Svarahu. Echad Alayva Mishleisha. If Aaron borrowed from 3 people, from Baruch, from Dr. Guy, and from Barish, obviously it's 3 different stars. Aaron dropped it because it would only make sense that the 3 of them would be together if Aaron dropped it. Echad Alayva Mishleisha, but if 3 people borrowed from Baruch, then Yazir. Excuse me. Echad Alayva Mishleisha. If 3 people, if one person, Aaron, borrowed from 3 people, from Baruch, Barish, and Dr. Guy, so then it obviously fell from Aaron, the one who took the loan. Yazal Alayva, the Gabi Loiva Shchiche. All 3 documents would be by Aaron. Gabi Milva Loiva Shchiche. It wouldn't be. If it was by the creditor, there were 3 different creditors. One of them would be by Barish, one of them would be by Dr. Guy, and one of them would be by Baruch. If 3 people borrowed from Baruch, Dr. Guy borrowed from Baruch, Barish borrowed from Baruch, and Irving borrowed from Baruch, then obviously it fell from the Milva, Yazal Milva. The Gabi Milva Shchiche, it fell from Baruch, who they all owe money to. Gabi Loiva Shchiche, it didn't fell from the debtor, because if it fell from the debtor, so then Dr. Guy's document should be by him, and Barish's document should be by him, and Irving's document should be by him. Ella, the Gemara is going to persist with another case, which we will discuss in Yirtzeh Hashem tomorrow night. Remember, tomorrow night will also be the first of the Pesach Shiurim, and I will give you a scoop that the name of the Shir tomorrow is a fascinating one. It's the Parshas Para Chametz connection. Parshas Para Chametz connection. If anybody wants to sponsor that share, 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. Tomorrow night, share at regular time at 10 to 8. Shir Be'ezras Hashem on Thursday night is 9 p.m. Shelley, you could put that on. Irving, you could put that on. 9 p.m. because of the Engel wedding. And now we're going to learn the Mishnah Yomis.